If you pay much attention to the folks in social media who talk about accessibility a lot, you may have heard the phrase that no ARIA is better than bad ARIA. And I figured I'd like describe what they mean by that. So ARIA on its own does nothing. It's merely a set of attributes that you put into your HTML that will be interpreted by assistive technologies in a way that conveys important information to users of assistive technologies, most notably things like name, state, role, and value, or, as I like to say, what is this thing and what does it do? Put differently, ARIA is a lie. For example, let's consider a set of radio buttons constructed using span elements. You would use something like span role equals radio, right? Um, and now keep in mind, you don't have to do it that way, right? In order to get the appearance that you want, you can do it without spans. You can actually do it with CSS, but let's continue. Let's continue with this. So a span element is not a radio button, right? Adding role equals radio to it doesn't make it a radio button, and it never will. And so here's what I mean. Let's take a look at the constructor for a native HTML radio button. We do input, input, if I could type, input type equals radio, and then we'll give it an ID, and that'll be radio as our ID. There we go. And so in the console, you see here at the bottom of my code pen, it says function HTML input element, and then it's got the native code thing in there. Anyway, so that's what it says, and that's the constructor for the DOM object created when you type in the HTML for your radio button. Now let's change this to a span. Okay, we're going to give this a span role equals radio. There we go. And now the console says HTML span element. And if I and keep in mind, I have the role equals radio on there, and it still says HTML span element in there. And that's what I mean. The console has said that, and according to the browser, this span will always be a span. So let's talk about why people say no ARIA is bad ARIA. And of course, the details matter. It all depends on what you're doing, but the principle really still stands. Adding role equals radio begins a chain of lies. Okay. Remember, like when you were a kid and your mom would catch you lying or something like that, and she would say, "Don't lie," because it means you have to keep lying. This is what she meant. Think about all the things that a radio button must do. And actually, to do that, I'm going to go over here to this W3C example located at the ARIA Patterns, ARIA Authoring Practices Guide. And they have a beautiful example here of exactly the kind of thing that you could expect a custom radio button to be. In this case, it's a star rating, and so as you select a star, you're selecting the value for the rating that you're going to give to whatever the thing is. But these are the things. These are all the things that a radio button must do. Okay, a radio button, it must be focusable via the tab key. And they actually have these behaviors listed here. But it needs to be focusable via the tab key. If one is checked already, in other words, when the person loads the page, if one is checked already, then that tab key behavior moves focus to the checked value. Otherwise, it goes to the first radio button in the group. Also, if none of them are checked, the first radio button state is moved to the checked state. And now from here on out, one of the radio buttons must be checked. Also, the radio buttons must react to all of the arrow keys. In other words, if we see here, I've selected this first one. Now, if I do right or up or down or left, then that's gonna change things. Down arrow or right arrow are gonna move focus to the next radio button, and we'll also check that radio button. Up arrow and left arrow will move focus to the previous radio button, and we'll check that radio button. The visual state and the programmatic state, as we can see here in this list of behaviors that they have in the pattern, will be toggled accordingly. In other words, not only do you have to change the way it looks, you also have to modify the checked state. And so ARIA checked must be toggled between true and false accordingly. And finally, the radio button must be visible even when a viewer is using the website in high contrast modes. And if at any time you haven't covered all of the above, then your lie falls apart because a radio button, a native HTML radio button set, does all of these things natively. Okay? So put more clearly, if you put ARIA role and other properties on some stuff and then don't ensure that it behaves like that thing, then you're really actually adding bugs by adding the ARIA. Using our radio buttons as an example, if you put a role radio button on a bunch of spans and you do not make sure that they act exactly like a set of radio buttons, then you may as well not have added ARIA there in the first place. And this is why no ARIA is better than bad ARIA.